On December 21, 2018, in a confidence motion brought by the People's Progressive Party against the coalition government was voted upon and, according to the Speaker, carried 33 to 32. January 3rd, there was a sitting of the National Assembly where the Speaker refused to reverse his ruling. In a special interview, I have with me Mr. Nigel Darmalal, a Member of Parliament of the People's Progressive Party. We all know what has transpired over the last week or two. At the end of it, government is saying that the motion was not successful, given in their case, or in their interpretation, a majority is not 33 but 34. First of all, what's your party reaction on that?
Well, I would like to wish you and your staff, as well as the rest of our country, Happy New Year. Okay. As a member of the People's Progressive Party, and being an executive member of the party, I think that the government is extremely irresponsible to even want to come up with something so crazy. I think it borders on lunacy to think that the number 33 that we have conventionally used since the life of this parliament and from historically, 33 has always been more than 32. And the Speaker was, I think, in order to have denied the government's request to have the motion, the vote, reversed. Subsequently, I think the government has decided that they will proceed to the court. But I think that in itself as well, for a number of reasons, does not augur well for our democracy. The Constitution of our country is our supreme law. And the People's Progressive Party civic, as government when we were in government, and as opposition as we are in opposition, we have always abided and complied with the statutes of our country, including the Constitution.
All right, I'm going to come back to that. Do you think, I know you can't speak for the government, but do you think in their mind they're saying, hey, look, this is different from all the other votes that happened before, when they held a one-seat majority while in opposition, and now holding a one-seat majority while in government? Is it you believe that they're saying that, look, the no confidence motion is completely different from all the other votes that happened before? That is why they're making
I actually think, yes, that the government has been shell-shocked by what has happened. The fact that one of their MPs voted with the opposition. The government has fallen. Article 106.6 of the Constitution requires the government to resign. Article 106.7 for the states, it puts a qualification to 106.6 that despite their resigning, they must be in office within and call elections within 3 months. If that is not possible, then they have to seek the parliament, a two-thirds majority of the parliament, to decide on whether we will go beyond the 3 month stipulated period. So I think the government they're basically playing games with their supporters, playing games with our country. They fully, I think, are aware that the motion has been carried. The evening when it was carried, actually, the Prime Minister and members of the cabinet met in one of the conference rooms of the parliament subsequent to the vote. And they basically acknowledged and agreed that they have been dethroned as government, and they intend to work towards resolving to an election. The president, the following morning, said that the government will abide by the Constitution, will abide by the vote of the motion. So what they're basically doing now is the government over the last 3.5 years, they have done tremendous damage to our country because of the way they manage our economy, because of the policies that they have put in place, policies which ought to have been in place that they have not pursued. So one of the things that I think they benefited from a lot is personal aggrandizement. And in terms of their perks, in terms of their fringe benefits, in terms of their multi-million salaries, they just don't want to give those things up. So this is just a red herring that they're throwing, a carrot to their supporters.
But clearly in their minds, I mean, you were right that, and I think all Guyanese would have saw and read that the night of the vote that there was a press conference by the Prime Minister, and he said exactly what you said and so on. But then there was this argument that was floated afterwards, and that was held on to. I'm trying to figure out whether in their minds I'm not, as I said, you can't speak for them, but there must be some logical reason in their mind why they're saying that. So I'm wondering whether they see a separation of a no confidence motion as against what the 33 would have voted on prior. I don't know if the Constitution in any way in your minds would have.
The Constitution is very clear in our minds, and I think in the minds of all those who are logical and all those who are experts and all those who believe in good governance and true democracy, that 33, according to our Constitution, the Constitution says by a majority vote.
Okay.
The Constitution did not say a majority vote plus one. So all of what the antics of the government now is basically to harness their support base.
And that is your party's official position, I guess, right?
That we've won by a majority, and I think the speaker yesterday in the parliament upheld that position.
And how did your party view the decision by the speaker yesterday?
Well, I think we've been saying all along, including at the night of the vote, that the vote was carried and the government must resign, and our party stands firm that the government must resign and ensure elections are conducted within the stipulated 3-month period.
I'm sure in some way your party would have felt vindicated by the speaker's ruling, but on the same breath he also says the court can decide that,
Yeah, well, we were never in doubt. So it is not about the speaker vindicating us. We were never in doubt that the motion was successful. The vote was a majority vote, and it was carried. Actually, the opposition leader, Dr. Barjagdio, our leader, he has been written to by the clerk of the assembly to state that the vote was carried, even outlining who voted yes and who voted no. And so we were never in doubt, and it is up to the government whether they want to go to court or not. We believe strongly that the court will throw that out, and they're just basically buying time to delay good governance in our country. And I think this is going to work towards their detriment. It is not good for what is taking place. I think the entire world is now looking at us, not because we are on the cusp of oil production, but because we now have a quasi-government that refuses to acknowledge the constitution of our country and to respect the free will of our people.
I know we are not lawyers, but how, in your mind as a politician, as a member of parliament for the PPP, how do you see this proposed court action by the government? How would that impact on what the Constitution, according to saying it in the 90-day timeline, how can that impact that 90-day timeline?
Well, there is something called the doctrine of separation of powers. The legislative branch of the government basically decided that the government, we did not have confidence in the government. The judicial branch belongs to the court, and they have, in some way, the ability and the capacity to express the constitution and the laws of our country. We will not be proceeding in that way. It was never our intention to go to court. We remain steadfast that the constitution takes precedence. Article 106 and 106 and 167 take precedence on this matter, and we are, looking forward to a date for elections within the stipulated 90-day period.
But that was the reason I asked the question, to see whether that would in any way impact on the parties, because, and I think you've answered it in some way. So my question to you now is that the party is in the process of preparing for an election within 90 days.
Well, our party has always been prepared for an election. And you can see this over the last 3.5 years. You can see the successes of our party at local government in 2016 and in 2018. We are a party that is ready to go back into government. We will further intensify our election campaign, roll out our strategy, implement the campaign, and work towards getting back into government. So we've already begun that process. particularly for the upcoming elections. But like I said, we're always in election mode.
So you're ready?
Yes, we're ready.
And that would have started, I guess, or restarted in some way after break from the holidays.
Well,
in preparing for this expected date.
If you know our leader very well, I think he gives us enough time to relax, but at the same time, we do not lose focus of what is before us. So even whilst we were in the holiday mode, I think we were also in our minds. We knew that elections will be held within 90 days or ought to be held, and our plan is being rolled out at this point in time.
Now, in going across the country and meeting Guyanese and meeting your party supporters and all of that, are they in any way, I don't want to say swayed, but are they in any way affected by what is playing out right now in terms of 34 and not 33, based on what the Constitution said and all these things that are happening? Are they in any way swayed by that in some way?
Well, like I said, we were very clear where we stand on this matter. The government was being in deception mode, trying to deceive people that they have not lost government, that they must not resign, that they are not in a caretaker role. Our supporters, and I think beyond our supporters, I think this is a national issue. And everyone that we have been in contact with, and I think there have been more people who are in contact with us than we are in contact with them, have expressed dismay at what has happened, and they're perturbed with the confusion that the government is creating. I think people have realized that they have been deceived by the government, and the parliament played that out.
Now, there is a scenario that could possibly play out, that while there's a separation of powers from the legislative and the judiciary, a date may not necessarily or may not be set. I can't speak for anyone. This is just a hypothetical scenario I'm describing here. A date may not be set, maybe on the basis that let's wait and see what the court will say. And so that also can stretch that timeline or go beyond that timeline.
I think
I'm not too clear on that. I'm sure viewers are not too clear on that.
You're right. We are very clear. The Constitution is very clear. If you permit me, I can actually read what the Constitution says. Article 166 of the Constitution, and this speaks to no confidence motions. It says, the cabinet, including the president, shall resign if the government is defeated by the vote of a majority of all the elected members of the National Assembly on a vote of confidence. It further says in Article 167, notwithstanding its defeat, the government shall remain in office and shall hold an election within 3 months, or such longer period as the National Assembly shall by resolution, supported by not less than 2/3 majority of the votes of all elected members of the National Assembly, determine and shall resign after the president, meaning the next president, takes office following the election. So we're very clear where the Constitution is concerned. We have always been a party that respects the Constitution, that complies with the Constitution. And insofar as we are aware, the court or whatever action the government intends to file, or if they have filed an action, has nothing to do with the date of the elections. We expect that the president will as part of his authority, call an election and set the date and call an election.
Well, there's a meeting scheduled, I'm told, with the president and your leader of the opposition on January 9th. And I'm sure that in itself will probably clarify things some more, hopefully, for Guyanese people. But what if, and again, this is hypothetical, what if a date is not announced within that 90-day period?
Well, if a date is not announced, then we are in a crisis, in a constitutional crisis. We're in a national crisis. And I think that the government will be held responsible for that. I think it'll be very irresponsible of the government not to, the president himself, not to set a date. And we intend to pursue this as far as it takes. But a date must be set. Otherwise, the country will, the government will be held responsible for the quote-unquote chaos, whether it's a constitutional chaos, whether they're going to have repercussions on our external donors, disbursing funds to our country to get projects implemented, to have infrastructural works done, contracts implemented, like I said. So we will be in a crisis after 90 days. And I think we stand firm that the government ought to call elections and have elections within the period of the Constitution.
There's another argument that has been mooted by some sections within the government. I can't say if it's an official statement. You can probably verify or clarify that. And I don't know if you can speak to that. And that argument has to do with dual citizenship. And they're now saying that Mr. Charandas, has dual citizenship, and as such, his vote may not be legal. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, I don't know whether Charandas, former member of parliament, now, Charandas has dual citizenship or not. I have no clue. So I would be, saying something that I don't know about. But what I've read around the mainstream media is that the person who has replaced Charandas is a U.S. citizen. So, there is that great duplicity that the government, they say one thing and does something else. And what will happen if indeed that is the case, that they are challenging the citizenship of Charandas, or the dual citizenship of Charandas on this matter? What becomes of the votes that he took on all other matters of the Assembly, including the passage of many bills, including the passage of 5 budgets that they have presented already to this nation, more than $1.3 billion. Long ago, the government should have been out of office because of those things.
How does your party view that particular argument?
Well, we think that it is very spurious. And the government is just creating this ruse, this smoke screen, to cover its incompetence, to cover its defeat, and to try to continue in office so that they can live the good life that only them alone are living.
During this period, just after the 21st of December, we've seen lots of Guyanese civil society coming out and say, hey, this is a very delicate time in our country, unprecedented, and it's calling for mature thinking, mature leadership at this time, and all of that. How does your party view that?
Well,
this is not to imply that there is not mature leadership.
Yes,
let me make that very clear.
When the vote was passed, when our leader, Dr. Jagdeo, got up and spoke after the vote was passed, I think he set the stage of how we see the country moving forward. And he basically said words to the effect that we must continue in a united way. We must try to be as inclusive as possible on decisions moving forward. We must ensure that peace and stability remains. And I think he was saying all of that in the context that the government will respect the Constitution, will respect the rule of law, will abide by the vote of no confidence. And we still remain firm to that. Progress in our country is not going to happen unless we have peace, unless we have good leadership, unless we have, a unity. The unity amongst our peoples in terms of, I'm not here speaking of demographic unity, but I'm speaking in terms of our vision for the country, that we must all be together in this one vision. And I think he was very clear where we stand on that. And our party is not one known to go and be destructive. And despite all these challenges, we have still remained firm and peaceful in support of our Constitution, and we are looking forward to winning the next elections.
The President, in his New Year's address to the nation, also alluded to some of that, saying that the Constitution will be upheld and all of that. How does your party view that, those statements by the President?
Well, we have lost, almost more than 3 weeks, or going on to 3 weeks, since the government ought to have been resigned. They have not made any moves in that direction. They have not made any moves to announce a date for elections. And we have been, very accommodating in the meantime, in the best interest of our country. And so I find it strange that on the morning after the defeat, the president said that they will abide by the ruling, by the vote, by the constitution, that is. But all of this is happening, and almost 3 weeks after, we have not moved forward. His government has not moved forward. They have found all the stumbling blocks. They are creating obstacles just so that they can remain in office illegally.
So you're not your party doesn't take that statement. Am I to believe that your party does not take that statement as it is for what it's worth?
Well, the thing is, it's not about whether the party takes the statement or not. I think the president ought to be the president of the country. And when the president speaks, he's supposed to speak to the country and on behalf of the country. And if the president 3 weeks ago says one thing and has not acted on the very things that he had said 3 weeks ago, then how do I trust a president and a government that behaves in such a way when the most important law of our land that they're trampling upon?
Now, as your party is in the process of preparing for the election, and I say that to say that I know you said that the party is always ready, but you still have to do certain things during this process. Would you care to maybe indicate what are some of the things that your party may be focusing on during this period? So, as you said, the party is ready to get back into government. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that will be telling the electorate?
Well, we believe there are some principles that guide us. We believe that the country must have a vision that suits all. We believe that the rule of law is important. We believe that the crime situation has to be quelled. It has been whether one person dies or one person gets robbed is one too many. So whether it moves from 100 to 92, crime is still high in our country. And I think that is what, those are things that we'll focus on. We'll also have to focus in terms of rebuilding the sectors of the economy, the productive sectors of our economy. The struggles that, more than 30,000 people have already lost their jobs, whether directly or indirectly as a result of policies of this current government. We have to help rebuild those lives. We have to ensure that the young people of our country actually get benefit out of the policies of our government through opportunities of jobs and wealth creation, those kinds of things. We have to go back and help to rebuild the lives of those sugar workers, 7,000 of them who were just terminated without any practical reason other than vindictiveness. We have to go back to our rice farmers and we have also made quite clearly that within, as quickly as we get back into government, if it takes days, if it takes hours, we will ensure that the hardship taxes are removed, and so that the economy can start, get an impetus from that and start to regenerate.
How much of an impetus would the no confidence vote provide to the party and its supporters?
Well, our supporters have always felt that the government may not have won the elections as clearly as the 4,500 votes seem to present, because we have presented a petition to our court, to the High Court. After 3.5 years, we have not heard a word in terms of its placement on a court agenda. So our supporters are very buoyant, and I think that even Guyanese across our country, I think the statistics of our last 2 local government elections and even our outreaches with people, everyone has been crying out over the last at least 2.5 to 3 years. The government had a honeymoon in the first year. But since then, I think their policies have taken effect and have created tremendous hardships on our people. And those hardships are not limited to the PPP support base. I think those things, those hardships cut across our entire country.
Nigel, let me thank you very much for sharing time with us here in this special program. As you make some points as relating to the no confidence vote and the consequences of that. Thank you very much. You're watching this special edition of The Factor. Nias Ban, thanking you for watching.